Chester County, and welcome back to another episode of Locker Room Buzz. I'm your host, CJ Tully, and we have a lot to get into today. You know, when that country music hits, we have an hour of sports talk ahead of us. Philadelphia Phillies, they're officially eliminated from the playoffs. We'll talk about all of that, especially with the news that's breaking of Rob Thompson coming back and what this Phillies lineup can do going forward. We also have the Dodgers now 2-0 in their series, and the Seattle Mariners 2-0 in theirs as well. We'll be breaking down those series. In college football, a lot of great things happening now. The Big Ten really making themselves known here throughout the top 25 in the AP poll. In football and overall NFL, we have the Philadelphia Eagles now really on the hot seat here. What's going to happen with A.J. Brown? We'll be getting into all of that. So starting off here with the Philadelphia Phillies, they did get eliminated by the L.A. Dodgers in 4 games there. It was interesting series there. You weren't really sure how it was going to end up playing out. You had the top of the lineup absolutely just not show up throughout this series. You saw that especially there in Game 4 where they could not buy themselves a hit. Came down to a costly error made by Orion Kirkring, but it should have never gotten to that point. I think that's the biggest thing that we have to look at when we take away everything from this playoff run and from this Phillies team this year. So, going forward, how are we going to fix this? What is the plan going forward here with the Philadelphia Phillies? You do re-sign and bring back manager Rob Thompson. And I think that move in and of itself shows where this Phillies team has to be headed. So coming into this offseason now, my thoughts were that Rob Thompson coming back, if he was to come back, would mean that this whole roster would have to be reconstructed. I felt like if you were to just let Rob Thompson walk, you then wouldn't have to worry about what this lineup would be because you could say, well, under new management, maybe this team can get things together. You do bring back Rob Thompson, though. So now what happens with this lineup? You have Ranger Suarez, Kyle Schwarber, and JT Realmuto, all free agents. So what are they going to do going forward with these re-signings? There's a lot of talks now that Castellanos is going to be on his way out. I think that's going to end up being a mutual agreement. I don't think that necessarily anybody in that party wants to have him back. I don't think he wants to be back. So that will be a good split there. But that then opens up the right field side as to who's going to cover that. Then you have players like Brandon Marsh, Alec Boehm, Bryson Stott. When it comes to them, how many of them are going to stay around? What have they been able to prove to this Phillies team, to the organization, and to the fan base to give them that kind of solidified spot here to stay on this team? I think Bryson Stott, out of all these lower-end players, has reserved the most rights to stay on this team just because he does bring the defense and he is just a 9-hitter. So he can work some pitching counts, but he's not going to light the scoreboard up come at the plate. But you know he brings you that defense, and I think that's where that's most important. So then looking at these big names here, you have, like I said, JT Realmuto, Ranger Suarez, Kyle Schwarber. In my opinion, I think you let Kyle Schwarber walk. I don't think he's going to be able to bring you enough. He's now looking for a 5-year contract is the last I've seen. And he's 33 right now, so what is a 38-year-old Kyle Schwarber going to be bringing you? Not to mention you still have Trey Turner and Bryce Harper signed for probably like 8 more years still on both of those contracts. So do you really want to set yourself up for this old veteran core where you're not going to be able to get rid of any of these contracts coming in the next few years? I think this is a perfect time to start a rebuild. I think while you can let Kyle Schwarber walk, you let him walk. I don't think he's going to be able to put up the same production for years to come. I think he just had that 56 home run year on a contract year. I think this was kind of his statement. I think he's going to go get his money, and that's kind of it with Kyle Schwarber. I don't think we need him back here. He obviously produces the home runs, but other than that and the clubhouse kind of vibe you get with him, I don't think it's worth bringing Kyle Schwarber back. Now looking at Ranger Suarez, yes, this Phillies rotation is stacked, but not knowing what you're going to get out of Aaron Nola for the next few years, you're not sure what the situation is going to be with Zach Wheeler as of next year, and then his contract expires. And with Andrew Painter, I mean, with the fact that we're still scared to bring up Andrew Painter, we're not sure how he's going to mount. I think having Ranger Suarez re-signed would be huge for this Phillies team. You still have Aaron Nola on contract for 5 years, and I don't even know what kind of Aaron Nola we're getting next year, let alone in the future. So I'm bringing back Ranger Suarez, in my opinion. I think he's able to solidify this rotation, and as you know, he can come out of that bullpen and do some damage there as well come the playoff time. So give me Ranger Suarez to stay here on the Phillies. Next up is JT Realmuto. Now, JT at the start of the season was somebody I was fine to let walk. I was a huge fan of Marchand, and I thought that this team could really start to get things going with him. It showed out that it's not possible to happen right now with him. And, you know, Garrett Stubbs was brought up now. I'm not sure what his situation is going to be going forward with the Phillies. I'm not sure if he's on a contract or not. But I think you have to re-sign JT Realmuto. You did just give up your best catching prospect in that trade there for Duran. So I think JT has to be here for another 2 to 3 years just to kind of solidify that catching position until you're able to bring somebody else up. I know Adley Rutschman is somebody that's been in conversation as a catcher that could possibly be traded, but until that really amounts to anything, I think that you have to stick with JT Realmuto. I think the pitching staff loves him. They know how to call the games with him. I think JT Realmuto is somebody that you can rely on to stay here on this Phillies team. Now going forward, other than that, you're going to have Harrison Bader. Now, he's a guy who came in here, and I wasn't expecting much of him. I was ripping him on this show weekly as soon as we brought him up here. He wasn't producing. He was striking out left and right. But by the end of that season, he ended up being the chief vibes guy. He was the number one guy when it came to vibes and how this team got their energy. He was able to get on base. He had some pop. He had speed. He just brought life to this Phillies lineup that was desperate for that. And coming into the postseason, that was something that really stood out to me, was this team had no energy throughout that Dodgers series. Even in the game where they won 8-2, you didn't really see a great camaraderie around the locker room. It felt like this team was kind of defeated. They knew this was they're going on their last leg here, and they just didn't show up for any of it. But Harrison Bader, I mean, even in his pitch hit at bat in that game 4, I mean, the way that he came to the plate, the swagger that just amounted to so much when he came to the plate, I think Harrison Bader has become the gold standard for what a Philadelphia Phillies player should be and what this organization should be looking to build around. I think Harrison Bader, I don't know if he will want to resign. I think that Philadelphia suits him well, but I know that he also wants to go play winning baseball. And after seeing how this Phillies team kind of held themselves in that playoff series, I'm not sure that he's going to want to come back for that. But I would love to see Harrison Bader back on this Phillies team. I'd like to see them go for more players like this, players that bring some life to the lineup. I mean, you have these old players like Harper, who does his rivalry pack. He's just trying to fit in here with the kids. I don't like anything that Harper has done for this team recently. Other than that, you have Trey Turner. He brings no life. I don't even know if the guy has smiled since he's been here on the Philadelphia Phillies. Kyle Schwarber, he does business and then he's out. JT Realmuto, very stoic. And there's really no life on this team. I get that we took away the daycare, which I was a huge fan of, because you can't be Alec Bohm, Bryson Stott, and Brandon Marsh and play like absolute crap, but then come on here and want to play all fun and games when the team's winning. So I'm glad that that ended, but I want to see more of that swagger. You know, you have players like Jazz Chisholm, Julio Rodriguez around the league who bring that energy, that life to the organization, into a lineup. Ronald Acuna is another one. We don't really have that guy, and I think bringing in Harrison Bader brought that to the lineup and it brought it to the clubhouse, and that's something that I want to see going forward, stay on this Philadelphia Phillies team. So, in my hypothetical here, we have Kyle Schwarber walking, but, you know, that's a lot of RBIs that you're going to have to make up for here. I believe he led the league in RBIs, or at least in the National League. So how are you going to make up for that? Well, this is a very dry pool here that you're going to have for free agents this season. Pete Alonso is going to be exercising his free agency, but I don't know that necessarily he would want to go to a division rival, especially with that being the Phillies. I don't know if that's necessarily in the cards, but if that is, Bryce Harper, just shut up and go to the outfield, because if we're bringing in another bat here, I don't care how badly you want to play first base, go back to the outfield. Or in that case, go to DH and have Pete Alonso play first base. But other than Pete Alonso, two players that I'm really looking at here is Kyle Tucker, who I think the Phillies were in on coming into the season before he did sign there with the Cubs. I would love to see them bring him in here. That left-handed pop would be back. You know, he can get on base well, and he fields the position decently. He's not the best fielder. If you want to go for a guy who can field the position and hit at the plate, I would look at a Cody Bellinger here coming into this offseason. Other than that, though, I could see Alec Bohm on his way out of here, and why not bring in Alex Bregman, third baseman here? He's coming off a pretty good season there for the Red Sox. He fit into that lineup well. I think he would be great here in Philadelphia. I believe he was actually roommates with Aaron Nola at LSU when they were in college, so kind of a connection there. Maybe Aaron Nola would be good for something if he could be able to bring him in here. But I'd love to see Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker be the big names that the Phillies target here. With that also being said, there's been rumors now that Phillies could be moving one of their big contracts. So when I hear big contracts, I'm thinking Aaron Nola, Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, and Zach Wheeler. So process of elimination here. Zach Wheeler is not going to get moved. Worst case scenario, he is retiring, just given his health concerns. Aaron Nola, nobody's going to want that contract, especially with the year that he has just had. Bryce Harper is too much of the Philly fanboy now. I don't think they're going to move on from him. He sells too much merchandise, and he kind of gives the team a name. So with all that being said, that leaves Trey Turner here as the possible contract that the Phillies could try and move. He was the NL hitting title, or he won the NL hitting title here this year, so that can stand for something here. I'm not sure who's going to want to eat that contract. I guess you would send him to maybe a Reds or a Pirates, somebody that's kind of looking to get somewhere, I would say, especially with money to spend, but I know the Pirates don't like to spend money, so I don't know if that would be it. But kind of get that contract out of here so that you can bring in some new names. I know there's no salary cap on baseball right now, but that doesn't mean that you want to go out there and break the bank and just spend all your money on another team that's not going to compete. You can move one of these contracts. That would be huge for this Phillies team. You have Max Kepler who could be walking. I mentioned Castellanos is probably going to get traded. Clear up some room here and bring in some new faces. Give the fan base something that they can kind of gravitate towards, because if this is going to be a whole nother, we bring back Rob Thompson and then we bring back the same Phillies lineup, you're not going to have people go to the stands. The regular season is not going to be filled the stadium like the way it has been. And then the postseason is going to kind of come down to how the Sixers have been, where you have to show me something. You have to get past the second round before I even lock into this team, because it's time and time again. Yes, you can make the playoffs now, but you're not getting any better. You've gotten worse every single year. The only way that you can go down now is to not make the playoffs. And I think that greed is going to kind of come into this a little bit when it comes to the marketing side of things, because the Phillies, in all honesty, should start a little bit of a rebuild here. They should let Kyle Schwarber walk. They should start to bring up some of these guys like a Justin Crawford, an Andrew Painter, and Aiden Miller maybe at some point during the season, just to see what they have, to know what you have to do going forward. I think that was something that this Phillies team missed out on when they didn't bring up Crawford while he was hitting well in AAA this season. You never brought up Andrew Painter. So you're protecting these guys. You don't want to trade these guys, but yet you're scared to bring them in a situation where the Phillies have a chance to make a World Series run. I think next year has to be the year you start to see what these guys have so that you can see what you have going forward. And the greed part of it comes into the fact that I think they'll re-sign some of these people just to keep fans thinking that there's a chance. I think if they go into a complete rebuild, that's going to remind you of the 2015, 2016 Phillies where, the tickets are $15 and then they're not making the profit, and then fans are going out here for the wrong reasons and we're not expecting the playoffs. So I think they're going to try and keep us on a hook here by keeping some of the same core and maybe sprinkling some of these new faces. That's why I want to see a Bregman or a Tucker in here, somebody that can electrify this fan base again to make us think that things are going to be different than they have been. And we just haven't been able to see that thus far. And I think that's where my biggest gripe comes here with the Phillies is you continue to say, we're going to run it back. This is our year. We got these guys. We have Kyle Schwarber. We have Bryce Harper. I was saying months ago that Bryce Harper needed to be looked at closer by these fans and by fans of baseball in general, because Castellanos was getting so much hate here by this fan base. And when I did my breakdown, I believe it was late July I did this, where I compared Bryce Harper and Nick Castellanos, and between their average, their home runs, their RBIs, their OPS, numbers weren't really that different. And I don't think enough people took that into consideration when looking at Bryce Harper and the way that he plays. Yes, he ended up with 27 home runs and a high 200 batting average, but when you're paying a guy as much as Bryce Harper's being paid, when he wants to make himself the face of the team as much as he has, where he did the rivalry packs and he completely embarrassed himself and the team, and then he goes out here and he wants a new contract extension, which he said he would push off for a little bit, but what are we extending him for? What has he provided to this team besides Bedlam at the bank that everybody wants to hang on to as Bryce Harper's big defining moment here with the Phillies? He has been an average player at that. I mean, he's not bringing you the numbers that some of these big league players are bringing their squads here. Some of the guys who are carrying other teams, you're just not seeing that here with Bryce Harper. And I think it's come to a point now where we need to start looking at it as Bryce Harper is getting older. He's not the same dog that he was when he was with the Nationals. He's not bringing that same energy to the squad. I don't even know how much of a leadership role he has on this team anymore. I don't feel like he's really done anything to do that. You've never seen him in the locker room doing any of that stuff. He says all the right things in interviews. That's great. He knows how to cater to the team. He knows how to cater to the media because he's been doing this for so long. But when you're not getting the production out of this guy who wants to make himself the face of your team and of your city, I think something has to happen with that. I know they won't move him, and that's really irritates me because when you have a guy who's not performing well and he knows that he's just going to be safe here, and he has Scott Boras as his agent, so you know he's going to try and pull as much money from this as he can. But I think Bryce Harper really needs to step up, and I think next year has to be the year he does it. I believe he's only made one All-Star game with the Phillies, if I'm not mistaken. He had the MVP year, but I know he didn't make the All-Star game in that year either. I'm looking here to see who this team can be going forward, and I think that's the biggest thing we all have to look at here. I mentioned Bader being the gold standard here for the Phillies. Rob Thompson is going to come back, but we need to see change in this locker room. We need to see change, especially with Kevin Long. If he goes, not that I think that makes a huge difference because these are professional baseball players where their swings shouldn't be determined on a hitting coach necessarily, but I think we need to get back to small ball, to getting on base, to producing runs. You look at a team like the Brewers, and yes, they're not able to put up runs right now on the Dodgers. Their pitching staff is incredible, but they're a very dink and dunk team here. You can kind of get some guys on base, you'll hit a double here and there, you draw some walks. The Phillies have been so reliant on the long ball that this year when the long ball was literally just through Kyle Schwarber, you could see the damage that it does to the lineup come to the playoffs because they don't know how to play that small ball. Castellanos doesn't know how to run from second to third on a bunt because that's not something they've had to do all season long. I think this team needs to get back to small ball, to producing runs the way that they have to be produced, and I think that's what the Phillies have to do going forward. But that's my rant there on the Phillies. Let me know what you guys think. If you want to call in, 610-701-9243. We'll be right back with more talk. We got a lot happening in college football, so stay tuned here on 95.3 WCHA. Locker Room Buzz. I'm your host, CJ Tully. Lots going on within the college football world. I mentioned everything going on with the Phillies and baseball, but October has really stood out to me as one of the best things going on right now has been college football, and I think that's something we're going to talk about, as always, here on Locker Room Buzz. Here we go. Weekend in college football started off with Alabama number 8 headed to Missouri number 14. Alabama takes this one 27-24. They were favored by 3.5 within this game. Big standout here for me was Ty Simpson there for Alabama. He goes 23 for 31 for 200 yards with 3 touchdowns. Alabama now goes to 5-1 on the season. Jam Miller did get hurt in this game, but he goes for 20 carries and 85 yards. Something that did stand out, though, was Ryan Williams was not involved for Alabama within this game. I'm not sure there were communication issues or what that was all about, but the number one receiver not getting involved in this game. On the Missouri side of things, you had another 5-1 team here as they took their first loss of the season. Bo Pabula not having his best game in the biggest game of his career so far. He goes 16 for 28, 167 yards, 2 touchdowns with 2 costly interceptions. He also rushed for 61 yards and a touchdown as well. Brett Norfleet was somebody I said to watch out for coming into this game, and he goes for 38 yards and a touchdown. But Bo had a chance to win this game here for Missouri. He had the chance to go down the field, win the game at the end of that regulation time, but he just could not get it done. He threw that costly interception. He had about 2 or 3 wide receivers wide open on the play. It looked like a misread. He threw the ball just a little early before his receiver was ready to turn around and get that one. But I do think that going forward, I think Missouri they're still in a good position here, as Bo is not just going to give up on the season thus far. But Alabama now has another big win under their belt as they beat Missouri, they beat Vanderbilt, and the week before that they beat Georgia on the road. So Alabama really getting their resume up after that big week 1 loss to Florida State, where everybody may have been overreacting at this point to how that game had gone. Next up, you had a Big Ten matchup here between Indiana number 7 and Oregon number 3 at the time. Indiana goes into Oregon and demolishes them 30-20. I don't even think the score tells the full scope of this one. Oregon was favored by 7.5 points in this one, and they could not get it done. Indiana moving to 6-0 on the season. Fernando Mendoza, my pick for Heisman. He goes 20 for 31, 215 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. You also had number 1 receiver being Elijah Surratt. He goes 8 receptions for 121 yards and a touchdown. They also they were able to get the ball twice on 2 interceptions on defense. So getting those extra possessions against a big team like Oregon is huge. Offense continues to look unstoppable. I mean, they beat Illinois 63-13, I believe it was, a few weeks ago. So Indiana's offense really able to get it going. The Oregon side of things, you have them now 5-1 on the season, taking their first loss. Dante Moore, 21 for 34, 186 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Dante Moore's worst game here so far with Oregon. Something I want to mention, though, with Oregon is the running back situation. They haven't had a designated number 1 running back. This week it was Jordan Davis. He goes for 59 yards, but last week you had Hill Jr. I know you have Kai Hughes, who you just do not use whatsoever. He doesn't even travel with the team. He was one of the top running backs last year with Tulane. It actually ended up being one of the reasons I gravitated towards college football as much as I did. I just loved watching this guy play. Goes to Oregon. I'm expecting this big year out of him, and he just hasn't touched the ball. Isn't even really traveling with the team. So interesting stuff there. The wide receivers, though, for Oregon, Malik Benson, he goes for 44 yards and a touchdown, and DeCorian Moore, he gets 39 yards of his own. But Indiana, a team to keep an eye on now, as they are now 6-0 on the season. And I don't know how many Big Ten teams are going to make the college football playoffs. I'll get into one a little bit later that I think could be the 4th team to make it if they are to get 4. But Oregon now on a bit of a watch here to see if they're going to be able to make it into the playoffs this year. Finally, the next game I want to break down in the most depth way is Oklahoma at Texas, the Red River rivalry. Oklahoma was number 6, Texas unranked coming into this game, but Texas wins this one 23-6. Oklahoma was favored in this one by 1.5 points. Oklahoma now 5-1 on the season. John Mateer making his return here for the squad. And I think the biggest takeaway from this game was the fact that John Mateer just wasn't ready to come back. He wasn't supposed to come back until the Ole Miss game. I believe that's in 2 weeks. But he comes back a little bit early, and he goes 20 for 38, 202 yards with 3 interceptions. And rushing-wise, he only had 5 rush yards. This guy's been rushing for 50-plus yards a week, including a few touchdowns, though. He didn't even throw for a touchdown in this one. And I think John Mateer might have rushed it and kind of ruined his chance for a Heisman, as well as Oklahoma's chance there for a playoff push, because now with the full strength, you can't really use the excuse that John Mateer just wasn't ready. So interesting stuff there. I think Oklahoma and John Mateer was somebody I was really, really loving coming into this game, especially into the season. I think Oklahoma wasn't giving enough credit as they should have been coming into the season, but they unable to get it done there. Texas, on the other hand, moves to 4-2 on the season. Arch Manning with the biggest win of his career, going 21 for 27, 166 yards with a touchdown. On the ground, you had Contrevion Windsor. He goes for 22 carries with 94 yards. They are back to being a ranked team, so count that for what you will. I still don't think Texas should have a chance at a national championship or a playoff run, just given the losses that they've had. But we'll see what happens. They could still get in the SEC championship and maybe make a push there. Some other games around the league I just want to touch on quickly. We had South Florida at North Texas on the Friday night game. South Florida was ranked 24th. North Texas unranked headed into this one. South Florida now 5-1 on the season. Byron Brown, he goes 22 for 28, 245 yards with 3 touchdowns and an interception. He also rushed for 82 yards and 2 touchdowns. So don't forget about the South Florida team. I know they made a lot of noise early, then they became unranked, and people started to forget about them. Now back up in the rankings. South Florida is legit. Byron Brown is a dog, and I think we should keep an eye on him going forward. Number one receiver on the day was Jeremiah Coger. He goes for 94 yards with 2 touchdowns. They really pulled away in this one. This game was very close in the first half, kind of back and forth, and then South Florida pulls away to put up those 63 points against North Texas. North Texas was undefeated coming into this game, so keep that in mind as well. Another big game we had here within the Big Ten was Ohio State number 1 at Illinois 17. Ohio State wins this one 34-16, and this game was all Ohio. I don't even think the score tells the full scope of this game, as Ohio State moves to 6-0 on the season. Julian Sayin, 19 for 27 with 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. On the ground, C.J. Donaldson got the most carries here with 13 for 44 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver Jeremiah Smith continues to make his name known with 42 yards and a touchdown of his own. Now, actually, I'm going to hold off on that game. Getting into a big game here, we had Texas and Florida meet up, or Texas A&M meet up with Florida at home. Texas A&M beats them 34-17. And I want to point out here, I want to say right now on the record, I think Texas A&M has a chance at the national championship this year. The offense is incredible with this team, and the defense has been putting up some stellar numbers here. So starting on offense, Texas A&M now 6-0 on the season. Marcel Reed in this game goes 16 for 26, 234 yards with a touchdown and an interception. Now, they have been without running back Le'Veon Moss, as he'll be hurt for a while now, but Reuben Owens the second steps in for 51 yards and a touchdown on the ground. 2 wide receivers here who have been absolutely amazing this season have been Mario Craver. He had 77 yards in this game, and Casey Concepcion with 46 yards this game. So that wasn't even their biggest game. These guys are complete dogs. I think Texas A&M, with that home field advantage, if they're able to use that in the playoffs, that will be huge for them. They were also able to force 2 fumbles in this game on defense. So this defense has been really helping out this offense as they're able to get things done. The defense has held opponents to 2 for 33 on third downs in their last 3 games. Those are numbers that are unheard of, and I think if they're able to keep that going with the way that this offense can also produce points, I think that this team has enough to get it going, and I think this team can make a deep playoff run, if not for the national championship. So keep an eye on Texas A&M, as they were currently ranked number 5 in that game there. Going forward, though, we have Arkansas and Tennessee. Arkansas wins this one 34-31, as they're ranked number 12. Arkansas unranked in that game. But our Tennessee pretenders, you have Joey Aguilar, who goes 16 for 25, 221 yards with a touchdown. They are now 5-1 on the season. On the ground, you have Deshaun Bishop. He goes for 136 yards with a touchdown. So great numbers there. But Tennessee has had some very, very close wins that I think need to get looked at a little bit more here coming into the halftime here, this halfway point here of the season. You have Mississippi State they were able to beat at home, and then you have Arkansas, and they had a close overtime loss to Georgia as well. But the win over Arkansas and Mississippi State were way too close for my liking, and I think that's starting to stand out a little bit more now. They had that opening game against Syracuse where they didn't really demolish them early. Syracuse was also able to hang around in that game. That then goes to my next point here. Ole Miss beating Washington State 24-21. Ole Miss barely escaped that game as well, and they're currently ranked within the top 5 here. Ole Miss is 6-0 on the season. Trinidad Chamberlain goes 20 for 29 in that game for 253 yards with 2 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. On the ground, Kawan Lacey, he goes for 142 yards. But another team that's pulling out a very close victory against a team that they should have really gotten the better of within this game. And then you look back to the LSU game, and they played LSU tight. But LSU isn't looking like a great team as well. LSU's win over Clemson is looking like it didn't really mean much the way that Clemson has been able to finish out the season so far. So keep an eye on Tennessee and Ole Miss. I think they're kind of getting a little too much praise right now. They haven't really shown me enough to really count them as a top dog right now. Now, Ole Miss will be playing Georgia on the road this weekend. So if Ole Miss is able to pull off that win and Lane Kiffin's able to put that on his belt, then I think that changes things a lot. But if Georgia's able to go in at home and demolish Ole Miss, I think that shows that Ole Miss might be another team that got a lot of praise early, but that isn't able to get it done at the end. So keep an eye on those two there. Now, I mentioned before that I was going to get to a team in the Big Ten that I think could be a sleeper pick here for the playoffs. That is USC, as they defeat Michigan 31-13. This USC offense is very, very scary. Now 5-1 on the season. Jaden Maeva, 25 for 32, 265 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception in this one. King Miller, our running back, goes for 158 yards and a touchdown. And then wide receiver Mekhi Lemon, he goes 9 receptions for 93 yards and a touchdown, and he has been an absolute dog here for them. Now, USC will have a big matchup with Notre Dame this weekend, so keep an eye on that game because I think if USC wins that game, they make a strong case for themselves to go in there and make it into the college football playoffs. And if Notre Dame loses that game, I think Notre Dame is officially eliminated from playoff contention because that would be their 3 biggest games that they've had this season. They would have been losing. So keep an eye on that game this weekend. I think if USC pulls this one off, we'll look for them to make a playoff push. Continuing in the Big Ten, you have Nebraska. They beat Maryland 34-31. Nebraska was my sleeper team headed into the season for the Big Ten. They're now 5-1 on the season. Dylan Raiola, 20 for 29, 260 yards with 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in this game. On the ground, you have Emmy Johnson. He goes for 21 carries, 176 yards, and then Naeez Hunter at wide receiver, 125 yards with 2 touchdowns for him. They do have some tough games remaining. They're going to have USC at home. They're going to be at UCLA. They're going to be at Penn State, which, again, this was one of the games that made me think that Nebraska could be a playoff team because at the time, Penn State was highly ranked, and I thought Nebraska could beat them. Now with the whole Penn State situation, I'm not sure if that game's going to hold as much weight. And then they'll be playing home versus Iowa to finish out the season. So keep an eye on Nebraska. I still think that they're a sleeper team here within the Big Ten. And I think that if they're able to pick up a win against USC at UCLA with the way they've been playing, those would be huge wins for Nebraska. Finally, here you're going to have BYU number 18. They beat Arizona 33-27 in double overtime. BYU has been creeping up here within the Big 12 now, 6-0 on the season. L.J. Martin on the ground. He goes for 25 carries, 162 yards with a touchdown. Bear Backenmeyer, he goes for 22 carries and 89 yards and 2 touchdowns as well on the ground. They also have some big games coming up. They're going to have Utah this week. Then they're going to be at Iowa State, at Texas Tech, home versus TCU, and then at Cincinnati. So if BYU is able to escape this with maybe 2 losses, I think you could see them making a case for themselves to make it to the college football playoffs. So I'm going to head to another time out here, but when we come back, I'll be finishing off some college football. Then we have lots to talk about here within the NFL as well. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned here on 95.3 WCHE. And welcome back to Locker Room Buzz. I'm CJ Tully. Finishing off here within college football, I want to talk about this Penn State situation that happened. So diving a little bit deeper into it here, Penn State falling down to a few losses now in a row. Penn State losing to Oregon 30-24. They then lose to UCLA on the road 42-37, and then Northwestern 22-21. In that UCLA game and then Northwestern game, they were favored by 20-plus points in both of those. So what does that lead to? Well, James Franklin has officially been fired from Penn State. The buyout was about $50 million, so it just shows you how badly they wanted to get him out of there. And on top of all of that, you also have in that Northwestern game, Drew Aller get hurt, and he will now be out for the season. So things collapsing very quickly now for Penn State. You saw one of the top prospects coming into the college season next year. He's already decommitted from Penn State, seeing all this disaster that has been happening around there. But I want to give you guys my prediction for a coach here. I think the best fit right now for Penn State and the most realistic fit would be Manny Diaz, the head coach of Duke right now. He was the defensive coordinator for Penn State in 2022 to 2023. I think he's just the best fit right now. I think this team has to look for their defense. You see Jim Knowles in there. I think he's not getting enough slack for the way that the Penn State has been playing as well. I mean, that defense is playing very well, don't get me wrong. But the fact that Penn State's not winning these games, you kind of have to start looking at everybody. Jim Knowles had a great defense last year with Ohio State, and you're just not seeing the same correlation to how they're dominating teams. I know a lot of that falls on the offense as well. But I think that it's a little bit bigger than just James Franklin. So getting Manny Diaz in here I think would be huge. He's familiar with the Big Ten, familiar with everything that works and how things work within Penn State. I know there's been Matt Rule's another big name that's come out here for a possible Penn State job. But I just think that the way Duke is playing, I think it's better for Manny Diaz to come over here to the Big Ten. I think that, Nebraska's playing well with some of the Matt Rule. I believe that's where he's coaching right now, is Nebraska. So I would like to see Manny Diaz move from the Big 12 here and come over, and help out, or ACC, and come out here and help out Penn State. So some other games to keep an eye on here this weekend. You're going to have Louisville at Miami. That's a huge Friday night game. 4-1 Louisville headed to 5-0 Miami. Keep an eye on that game. Saturday, you're going to have number 10 LSU headed to Vanderbilt, number 17. Then you're going to have, as I mentioned before, Ole Miss, number 5, headed to number 9, Georgia. That's where College Game Day will be. Should be electric there. Number 11, Tennessee, headed to Alabama, number 6. This is another game where I think it'll show you if they're really pretenders or contenders here as they take on Alabama on the road. Then you're going to have number 20, USC, taking on Notre Dame on the road, number 13. And then Utah 23 at BYU, number 15. So keep an eye on all of those games there. There's going to be an interesting slate there for college football. Going over some rankings now. Your top 2 remain as Ohio State and Miami, but Indiana moves up to number 3. They're moving up 4 spots there. Texas A&M, the team I am all about this year, moving up to number 4. That is then followed by number 5, Ole Miss. They kind of switch spots there. And some of the other big moves now, Notre Dame moves up 3 spots. You see Oklahoma move down 8 spots. They're now number 14. A lot of unranked teams finally making their stance now. As USC is now at number 20. You have Texas at 21, Utah at 23, Cincinnati at 24, and then Nebraska at 25. So all teams that were not ranked last week now finally ranked. Moving on, though, to the NFLs, we had another big slate of those games as well this week. Starting off here, Thursday night, the Eagles game, which kind of got buffered given the fact that the Phillies got eliminated and the Flyers lost as well. So it was kind of just an all-around bad night. Kind of forgot the game even happened between the last time I had a show and now. But the Eagles fall to 4-2. Giants go up to 2-4 after the Giants beat the Phillies 34-17 in this one. Jalen Hurts goes 24 for 33, 283 yards with a touchdown and an interception. Saquon Barkley just 12 carries for 58 yards. Dallas Goedert, the unsung hero here of the season for the Eagles. He goes 9 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown. And A.J. Brown gets 6 receptions for just 80 yards. So, some of the biggest things in this game, well, Jalen Carter did not play, which was a surprise to me. I didn't know that was supposed to happen. You had Quinyon Mitchell, who left hurt, and Reed Blankenship, who left hurt. So, kind of depleted defense by the end of this game. And then, I do want to get into this whole A.J. Brown situation real quick before I move on with the NFL slate. I think that it is officially time to move on from A.J. Brown, to trade him out of here, and to start building this team around how you play. All right, I think the Eagles are kind of constructed right now for a run-heavy team, and I think that's why Saquon's in here. That's why the team worked last year. So to have 2 number 1 wide receivers, you have Jahan Dotson, who was a number 1 or first-round pick a few years ago. I think there's too many receivers for the way that this team's constructed. I think it ends up coming down to either Jalen Hurts or A.J. Brown is going to be run out of town, and it's harder to run out a quarterback than it is a wide receiver because they could be seen as prima donnas and everything else. I think getting A.J. Brown out of here, working around the way that Jalen Hurts plays football, and then drafting your future quarterback this year in the draft because there's going to be so much quarterback potential. I think that's the way that I'm so stuck on the Phillies. It's a shame they're out of here. But this Eagles team should be going forward. I think they should start to build this as a run team. Use Devontae Smith as number 1. You'd love to use Dallas Goedert. He's kind of your secret weapon. Get A.J. Brown out of here. Get that toxicity out of the locker room. See what you can get in return. In my opinion, you're probably not going to get a number 1 pick at this point, just given the fact that teams know he wants out. So they're going to say, well, we don't have to give that up because A.J. Brown's going to cause issues if you don't trade him. So you might get a second-round pick, maybe a third-round pick involved in that as well. I think you have to start building around that. I think you go and get your quarterback. Maybe that's what you're using that second-round pick on, kind of like what you did with Hurts and Wentz when they were switching out. But I think it's important to get Brown out of here while you can. Trade deadline is going to be November 4th, if I'm not mistaken. So you still have some time. I think a lot of moves will be made. I don't think you're necessarily going to get a player in return. If you could send him, I think as a Patriots are my AFC team. So if we can give him to the Patriots, I think that would be huge for the Patriots. Drake May is playing out of his mind. I'll be getting to that a bit later. But if you pair Stephon Diggs and A.J. Brown over there, again, kind of 2 big heads who I'm not sure they're going to be working well together, but I think they could seriously make some damage there within the AFC. And you know that A.J. Brown loves Mike Vrabel, so I think that's the best fit. I'm sure Patriots have draft picks that they can be giving up, and I think that is where you'll most likely find A.J. Brown. I did see reports, though, recently that he could be going to the Steelers, but I don't think that works out for them at all. DK Metcalf and him, I mean, they're 2 dogs at wide receiver, but I think you pair them together, there's going to be that conflict as well. A.J. Brown wants to be a number 1 receiver wherever he goes, so that's what you're going to have to look for. But also in this game, Jackson Dart goes 17 for 25, 195 yards with a touchdown and a rushing touchdown. I still think he's the real deal. I think he was the perfect pick here for the Giants. Not going with Shedeur, going with Dart. I loved it in the time of the draft, and it's paying out well for them now. Cam Scatterbo, a guy that I was trying to put people onto before the season, especially in my fantasy drafts. 19 carries, 98 yards for 3 touchdowns. Cam Bam Bam Scatterbo is the real deal. Not sure how long he's going to last in the league, given the way he throws himself around there, but a lot of fun to watch. Again, I'll say this every week. If you haven't watched his Arizona State highlights, dude was a dog in the playoffs for them. Check those out. Wan'Dale Robinson also gets 6 receptions for 84 yards and a touchdown. Now moving on, we had the Broncos and the Jets in a complete crapper in London. That was a 4-2 Broncos team now to an 0-6 Jets team. Only stat that I wanted to point out here was Justin Fields going 9 for 17 for just 45 yards at quarterback. That's embarrassing. Next on Sunday, Cardinals 2-4 going to the Colts 5-1. Colts win this one 31-27. Jacoby Brissett has himself a big revenge game against the Colts though. 27 for 44, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Daniel Jones for the Colts, he goes 22 for 30, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, as well as a rushing touchdown. Jonathan Taylor has to be winning AFC Player of the Year here. He goes 21 carries, 123 yards, and a touchdown. He has been carrying this Colts team for a while now. I mean, the numbers that he is putting up is incredible. Everyone thought he was at the back end of his career, wasn't really going to be making a difference. I believe there were trade talks a few years ago for the Colts, and Jonathan Taylor, they weren't really on the same page. So huge to see him putting together a good season there for them. Then you had the Chargers go and defeat the Dolphins on the road, 29-27. Justin Herbert goes 29 for 38, 264 yards with 2 touchdowns. And they finally find Ladd McConkey. He goes for 100 yards and a touchdown. Also, with all of their running back injuries, they have to bring in Kamani Vidal. He goes 18 carries for 124 yards. The other side of things, though, wasn't a bad game for the Dolphins. Tua going 21 for 32, 205 yards, a touchdown. But again, 3 costly interceptions is kind of what you're getting to see here out of Tua. But Devon Achane, he goes 128 yards with 2 touchdowns on the ground. Patriots pick up a huge win in New Orleans against the Saints. Drake May going 18 for 26, 261 yards with 3 touchdowns. Jason Booty, he goes 5 receptions, 93 yards and 2 touchdowns. Should have been a lot more damage done by Drake May and Booty, but a lot of bad calls there against the Patriots that the Saints were able to take advantage of. On the Saints side of things, though, Spencer Rattler, he's having himself a decent season there with the Saints. 20 for 26, 227 yards. Chris Olave, lead receiver with 98 yards. Now moving on to this new Browns team as you trade quarterback Joe Flacco. Dylan Gabriel getting his second start. They lose 23-9 to the Steelers, who now moved to 4-1. But Dylan Gabriel, he went 29 for 52. Why is Dylan Gabriel throwing the ball 52 times in a game? He does throw for 221 yards without turning the ball over, but 52 passing attempts is insane for a young quarterback. I do like him, though. I do like Dylan Gabriel a lot. I don't think Shedeur would do any different there for this team, so continue with Dylan Gabriel. But on the Steelers side of things, you're seeing a 21 for 30, 235 yards and 2 touchdowns for Aaron Rodgers, and a number 1 receiver, DK Metcalf, 95 yards with a touchdown. Next game, you had the Cowboys get absolutely embarrassed yet again to the Panthers. Cowboys now 2-3-1 on the season. Panthers advanced to 3-3. Dak Prescott had a big day, though, 25 for 34, 261 yards with 3 touchdowns. And George Pickens is really starting to show up to be the number 1 wide receiver here in the absence of CeeDee Lamb, 168 yards with a touchdown. But Bryce Young and the boys got it done. Bryce going 17 for 25, 199 yards with 3 touchdowns and an interception. Rico Dowdle in a big revenge game here against the Cowboys, 30 carries for 183 yards. He also received for 56 yards and a touchdown. Tatoria McMillan, he has his biggest day, his first touchdown in the NFL. He goes for 3 receptions, 29 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the day. So a big day there for the Panthers. Now the Seahawks took on the Jaguars, and the Seahawks were my team to win the division, the NFC West, coming into the season. For some reason, they were the biggest underdog to win the division. They even had the Cardinals above them. I wasn't too sure about why that was the case, but they're showing up big this year, now 4-2. They defeat the Jaguars 20-12. Sam Darnold, 16 for 27, 295 yards with 2 touchdowns. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba, 8 receptions for 162 yards and a touchdown. He is an absolute dog. I think Darnold was getting not enough love coming off the season he had with the Vikings. I think people thought that was kind of going to be a fluke. But Sam Darnold showing that he is the real deal. Trevor Lawrence had himself a good day, though. 27 for 42, 258 yards and 2 touchdowns for the Jaguars. I'm going to cut to a quick timeout here before we finish up the show. But, yeah, stay tuned for more NHL news, and I have a lot on hockey as well. So stay tuned here on 95.3 WCHE. And welcome back to Locker Room Buzz. I'm CJ Tully. We had to get the Johan Duran intro out of there, so we switched it up with a little bit more country. But continuing on here with the NFL, we had the Rams Head to the Ravens, who are now 1-5 on the season after a loss to the Rams. Rams winning this one 17-3. Matthew Stafford, 17 for 26 with 181 yards with a touchdown. Kyron Williams in this one, 50 yards and a touchdown. And then the interesting quarterback situation here for the Ravens, given Lamar Jackson being out. Cooper Rush, he goes in there for 11 for 19, 72 yards with an interception. They then bring in past All-Star game starting quarterback, Tyler Huntley. He goes 10 for 15 for 68 yards. Derrick Henry has a big day for what it's worth, 24 carries for 122 yards. Moving forward now, the Titans and the Raiders met in a game that nobody really paid attention to. Cam Ward goes 26 for 38, 222 yards with a touchdown and an interception. Now the Bengals, they bring in Joe Flacco there from the Browns. They lose a close one now to the Packers, 27-18. Joe Flacco does go 29 for 45, though, for 219 yards with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. That's important to note there for them. Jamar Chase, 10 receptions for 94 yards with a touchdown. Jordan Love for the Packers, he goes 19 for 26, 259 yards with a touchdown and an interception. We also saw Matthew Golden's biggest day with 3 receptions and 86 yards. I want to say, the way that the Packers and the NFL view the Eagles as a boring team, the Packers might be the most boring team to watch in the NFL. I don't know how to explain it to you. They don't have that guy that really stands out to you on the field, and they are a very, very boring team to watch. But for the Bengals, 2-4 now on the season with Joe Flacco. Maybe they can start to get something together, especially with the way the Ravens are just not performing this year. The Bengals can maybe creep up here on the Steelers and make some noise within that division. You then had the 49ers head to the Buccaneers. Buccaneers win this one 30-19 as they improve the 5-1 49ers to 4-2. Mac Jones for the 49ers, he goes 27 for 39, 347 yards with 2 interceptions. I think there's more of a quarterback discussion to be had here with the 49ers than maybe people are thinking when Brock Purdy comes back. I do think Mac Jones has earned his spot, and if not starting for the 49ers, maybe somebody that could be interesting there for the 49ers to kind of deal at the deadline. Kendrick Bourne, Mac Jones' guy, he goes 142 yards, another big week for him. But Baker Mayfield really making a case for himself as a possible MVP, going 17 for 23, 256 yards with 2 touchdowns. So interesting stuff there for them. Also to note, Emeka Egbuka is also out now for the Buccaneers. They are hoping to get Mike Evans back this week, which I sure hope for my fantasy team purposes, but it does seem like Mike Evans will be able to go this week in the absence of Emeka Egbuka. Then you had Sunday Night Football, which got a little chippy towards the end, but the Lions fall to the Chiefs 30-17 as the Chiefs might be back, folks. They are now 3-3 on the season. Lions going to 4-2. Jared Goff went 23 for 29, 203 yards with 2 touchdowns, so not a bad day whatsoever. But Patrick Mahomes and the boys were buzzing. 22 for 30 is Mahomes for 257 yards, 3 touchdowns, as well as a rushing touchdown there for him. Hollywood Brown, 4 receptions for 45 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chiefs might be back. You did see Branch get his suspension. People might not think that's enough. But Juju is kind of that guy that I've seen a lot of reports that a lot of people want to hit him and do that to him. So Branch just got the advantage there. Falcons on Monday Night Football, they surprised a lot of people with a 24-14 win over the Bills. Josh Allen, everybody's pretty boy. He goes 15 for 26, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Why are people not talking about the Bills and Josh Allen the way that they're talking about the Eagles and Jalen Hurts? Josh Allen's not really having that incredible of a season. There's been a few games now where they've even had to squeak out victories and Josh Allen not be the one to get it done. But I know that discussion is for another day. Nobody wants to have that one. Falcons, though, Michael Penix Jr., 20 for 32, 250 yards with a touchdown. Bijan Robinson is an absolute dog right now, somebody the Eagles could have gotten in the draft a few years ago. He goes 19 carries, 170 yards with a touchdown. He also had 68 yards receiving. Drake London with a very fancy touchdown, along with 158 yards. Second half of that Monday night doubleheader was the Bears at the Commanders. Bears sneak out a win this one, 25-24 over the Commanders. They are now 3-2 on the season, and there's some hope there for the Bears. I'm very interested to see what happens with them. Caleb Williams goes 17 for 29, 252 yards with a touchdown, and DeAndre Swift, 108 yards on the ground with a receiving touchdown as well. So that will do it for the NFL slate. Lots to look forward to here this week as well. Eagles will have a revenge game against Carson Wentz in Minnesota, so keep an eye on that one. But for the first time here this year, we'll be having ourselves a little Flyers talk, so let's get into it right now. I was at the home opener for the Flyers on Monday night. Flyers now 1-1-1 on the season. They opened the season with a loss to the Panthers 2-1. They then lose to the Hurricanes in overtime 4-3. And then Monday night, the game I was at, the home opener, they pick up a big win over the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. They win that one 5-2. Next game will be Thursday against the Jets, so keep an eye on the Flyers there is they're starting to make some noise within hockey. Current line right now that I want to talk about here for the Flyers is the line of Tyson Foerster, Noah Cates, and Bobby Brink. It's listed as their third line, but that was the starting line at the game I was at, and man, do they get on the puck quickly. This Flyers team built with a lot of speed. Now, that's going to play to their advantage and their disadvantage, because one of my biggest takeaways from this game was, yes, very fast. They got down the ice, and that Forrester line knows what to do with the puck. Noah Cates had an amazing goal on that opening night game against the Panthers, and then Tyson Forrester, with great footwork, had himself a goal Monday night. But something they're lacking right now is that dog, Broad Street bully mentality, and I wanted to see a little bit more of that, especially with bringing in Rick Tocchet. I thought that's how this Flyers team would kind of navigate themselves. They bring in Zegras, another speed guy, so it's kind of becoming a very skill, speed-heavy team, but the Panthers were bullying the Flyers the entire night, and I think that's something that going forward, maybe you bring somebody in here. I know Ristolainen will bring that dog for you, but he's hurt right now. You saw Konechny kind of get a little chippy with some of the guys at face-off, but I wanted to see the Flyers kind of show that fight, a little bit more of that boom back at the Panthers, because they were kind of just getting bullied throughout this game. Now, I know the Panthers are also kind of an outlier in this, as they're just a very rough and tough kind of team, and maybe teams that the Flyers play in the future might not bring that same energy, but I want the Flyers to be able to compete with the best. They showed that there on Monday night. Power play line of Travis Konechny, Zegras, Michkov, Tippett, and Drysdale. They went 0 for 5 on Monday, but I don't think that tells the full story. This team was able to get off a lot of shots. There were a lot of times that Zegras was open in the corner, just couldn't put it away, but I know one day that's going to click, and I think that's something we can look forward to here as Flyers fans, is that this line is going to connect. They do have, Sean Couturier went for 2 goals and an assist on Monday night. I'm not going to lie, I was harassing him the entire night. I don't think he was playing well. He looked old. He just very slow. But then as soon as I said that, he turns around and he scores 2 goals. So big night there for Couturier. Hope to see that continue. Didn't realize he still has 5 years on his contract. So that's going to be something the Flyers are going to be dealing with for a while now. He does lead the team, though, with 2 goals. Bobby Brink also has 2 goals this season. Tyson Forrester, he has a +4 on the plus-minus this year. So Tyson Forrester making the difference here. As I said, that line has just been absolutely incredible. Dan Vladar, goalie, 1 for 1 with a 2.02 goals against. That is an opposition to Samuel Ersson, who had the 1 overtime game with a 3.71 goal against. But Flyers team has a lot to look forward to. I know I'm looking forward to this season. I think the biggest thing going into the season has to be to just make a playoff push. There was 2 years ago now, the Flyers had a chance to the playoffs. There were 7 games left, and they completely tanked it. I just want to see this young squad get some playoff experience. I want to see Rick Tocchet be able to coach these guys in the playoffs. I think that's the biggest thing that Flyers fans have wanted. It's just get to the dance. Let's see what you can do. Maybe you're not going to the cup immediately, but get some experience. Get your team ready for the playoffs. Get them get that taste so that they're hungry for it for years to come. So that's the news on the Flyers. Now, if anybody knows me, you also know I'm a Blues fan, so we're going to do some Blues breakdown as well. They lost their opening night 5-0 at home to the Wild. Then they win back-to-back games on the road to the Flames and the Canucks, including a big win over the Canucks, because they were back and forth in that one, and they finally pulled away, kind of like how the Flyers were in their game. They will have a big matchup tonight against the Blackhawks. That'll be nationally televised, and I'll be checking it out. Big rivalry there between them. Their top line right now is Jake Neighbors, Robert Thomas, and Pavel Buchnevich. That's a line that they were working with last year as well for a little bit, so keep an eye on them. Power play line of Robert Thomas, Braden Shen, Paul Buchnevich, Jim Snugger, and Cam Fowler. So some interesting stuff there. Jake Neighbors does lead the team with 3 goals, followed by Jimmy Snugger, 2 goals and an assist for him. Braden Shen with a big goal the other night as well against the Canucks. Goalie Jordan Binnington, 1-1 on the season with a 3.50 goals against. Back up there is Joel Hofer. He has 1 win with 2 goals against. But this Blues team, kind of similar to the Flyers in the way of just getting to the dance. And they made it last year, or they didn't make it last year, but they got real close. And I think that this Blues team, they did get there. They can make some real noise come the playoffs. They're under some good coaching and management as well. Really looking forward to what this Blues team can do. It's always good to have a team. The Blues are a team that I grew up liking. I don't remember how I played the video game a lot, and they were always the team I picked. Like the colors, loves TJ Oshie and David Backes. So that's kind of how I fell in love with the Blues. It's kind of just continues. It's always good to have a team on the opposite side of your division and all that you can root for, and the Blues have always been my team there. So you're always going to get Flyers talk and Blues talk now going forward. If there's any other big news within the NHL, I'll be throwing that in there as well. But always love watching hockey. It's very interesting, and I think the more the Flyers are able to produce in the playoffs and throughout a season, I think it'll draw more people to hockey. I think hockey is kind of a lost thing here in Philadelphia. It's kind of become the Eagles, the Phillies, the Sixers will sprinkle themselves in there, but nobody really likes the Sixers. Also, that's a team that I could talk about going forward, but not until they give me something to talk about, because there's lots of other stuff to talk about. But I think seeing the atmosphere on Monday night at the Flyers game kind of showed me what the city can be when it comes to hockey. I don't think the Flyers have to be that backseat team. I think this city will really rally around the Flyers, and I think a lot of people my age and younger, I'm 24, we don't know winning hockey. And I think once we get that taste of it, like I said, even with the players, once winning hockey comes to Philadelphia, it could feel like a red October. It could be an orange May and June. I just think that taste has to come back. I mean, I know my cousins and people that are older than me like to have the debate that we're so lucky because we've gotten winning baseball and winning football for so many times, and we've seen the Phillies win the World Series in 2008, and we got the Eagles winning Super Bowls more recently, but we don't know hockey. And I think that hockey needs to come back into Philadelphia. On the note and the debate of that, I mean, it's a little late to call in now, but you can always hit me up on Instagram at LRBuzz_pod. But would you rather have grown up in a time where there's winning, playoff appearances, everything like that, but then you're expecting so much more and the heartbreak is so much more when the teams don't fully succeed in it? Or would you rather have the times of, the 2015 Phillies where it's that 11-year drought of not even making the playoffs and you're not expecting anything going into the season, but then that magical run they can make in 2022 hits so much different because you are at a drought, where now we're kind of expecting so much from this team that when they do go back into a dry spout, it's going to feel like we're missing something. Or when Orion Kerkering throws a ball 400 yards over the catcher's head, it hurts more because you're expecting so much from the team. Just an interesting thing to put out there. I might make a video about that. I do have a podcast you guys could check out. That's not the show necessarily, but Let's Talk Sports is on Spotify and YouTube. You can check that out. As I said, you can always hit me up on social media at LRBuzz_pod. Always posting daily content there. I do not miss a single day of content, so always something going on in the sports world that I will be covering, so be sure to check that out as well. And, of course, you can catch me here every Wednesday, 11 to 12 on 95.3 WCHE. I'll be back next week with another great show for you guys. Always feel free to call into these shows as well at 610-701-9243. Just calling in at a break there. A lot of great football this weekend. We have the Flyers Thursday night, and we have college football. Big slate. Definitely check that out. I hope some of you guys are getting more into college football after hearing it on the show. But, again, check me out next week. Check me out on Spotify at Let's Talk Sports. Catch you guys next time.